There is a ton of pressure on Eagles offensive coordinator and play caller Kellen Moore heading into the divisional round against the Los Angeles Rams. I'll tell you why on this Friday edition of Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the code in all lowercase, LockedOnNFL, to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Eagles-Rams this Sunday, a 3 p.m. kickoff at Lincoln Financial Field. If the Eagles win, they will make it to their third NFC championship in the last 8 seasons. I would assume it's against the Detroit Lions. It had to head to Detroit. But they could. There is a scenario where they're hosting the Washington Commanders next week in the NFC title at the Link. Overall, though, I'm pretty confident heading into this game against the Rams. I don't think the Rams are a team you should sleep on. They were hot entering the playoffs, winning 3 of 4 games because of their defense. Their pass rush is very good. Matt Stafford still has the ability to have big-time games. I look back to that Bills matchup. Sean McVay is one of the best play callers in football, but I will say, I think actually the Eagles played a superior team last week in the Green Bay Packers, and I'm pretty confident that unless the Eagles are shooting themselves in the foot on Sunday, especially with the weather, if it's going to be snowing, I think the Eagles are just too physical and too talented them for 4 quarters. It might be close for a little bit, but overall, if the Eagles aren't turning the ball over or looking as rusty as they did last week in the passing game, if that's all corrected, I think they'll win this one by multiple scores. But that is something the Eagles need to correct. Maybe they can, I think they can win against the Rams without being a juggernaut passing the football, as I've said in the last few shows. But overall, we all know you're not going to win a Super Bowl throwing 131 yards against the Lions, against Mahomes, Lamar, Allen. I've already discussed that. It needs to be more efficient. The volume doesn't need to increase. I think the efficiency does. And a lot of that, as we talked about, was on Kellen Moore. I thought Sunday's game plan was far too conservative. When you look at the routes that he had Devontae Smith running, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, Jahan Dotson, it was very vanilla. The Packers knew what was coming. There was little to no separation. There was just no marriage between the run game and the pass game. It just felt out of sync. And I'm not going to lie, there's a lot of pressure on Kellen Moore this week because he has taken 3 interviews this week for open head coaching vacancies. He met with the Dallas Cowboys today remotely. He's meeting with the New Orleans Saints this week and the Jacksonville Jaguars. And there's a lot of pressure on Kellen Moore because if he comes out and lays another egg against LA, where the passing game looks completely out of sync, yeah, some of that's on Jalen Hurts, of course. But Kellen Moore is the play designer. And if we see again, a lot of it is on him at the field. The tape doesn't lie. Last week, Kellen Moore did not have a strong performance. If he comes out and lays an egg, I'm going to be really pissed off. And I'm not saying Kellen Moore should not have taken these coaching interviews, right? Of course he should. Everybody should. Shane Steichen did it back in 2022. And there was no issues, right? The Eagles' offense was soaring against the Giants in that game in the divisional round, the NFC title. The run game was cooking the 49ers. The Super Bowl, Jalen Hurts had one of the best performances of all time against Patrick Mahomes. So I'm not saying you shouldn't take the head coaching interviews, but if you make it a distraction, then, okay, now I have a problem. And I think Jonathan Gannon was absolutely distracted last run in 2022 when he was taking coaching interviews with the Arizona Cardinals. And I thought the defense suffered as a result, especially in that game against the Chiefs. So yeah, again, Moore, I'm not blaming him for taking these interviews, but for Nick Sirianni to say, like, yeah, he was doing this on his own time, Kellen Moore is wired in, like, he's still in meetings, he is invested in this game plan against the Rams, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, like, I agree. But I think it's naive to say Kellen Moore's head is 100% into what the Eagles are doing. Like, it takes a lot of energy and preparation to tell the Saints, to tell the Cowboys, to tell the Jaguars why he should be their next head coach, right? And that's not just something he's winging. He's just logging on to Zoom, meeting with the Saints, and he didn't do any work before. It doesn't take any brain power, any sort of emotional energy into that. I think it's naive to say that. So yeah, I'm not really blaming Kellen Moore. It's more the system the NFL has right now for coaching searches where teams can meet with coaches that are in the middle of a playoff run. I just think it's a rule that we have to change where, yeah, I understand that by the time the playoffs are over, the Senior Bowl's already starting and the draft process is like in full gear. The NFL Combine's only a month later and the Pro Day circuit and the draft is a month later after that. Like things in the NFL offseason move very fast. Free agency is in March as well. Like I completely understand that. But at the same time, it makes me so annoyed when teams are meeting with coaches that are in the postseason. It feels a lot like tampering to me, especially when it's the Dallas Cowboys. Maybe that's why it's pissing me off a little bit more. So I'm not blaming Kellen Moore. Like, obviously, he should take these interviews. I just wish the NFL didn't allow it until after the playoffs. Or maybe even, like, until, like, you can interview them at the end of the regular season if you have an opening already. But then when it comes playoff time, you lock it down for a few weeks, and then you restart the process. I don't know if that's feasible, but I think it's crazy to say that Kellen Moore is fully invested in what the Eagles are doing right now. And again, it doesn't. You can have your cake and eat it too. Just because he's taking coaching interviews doesn't mean he's going to be terrible. Again, Shane Steichen did it in 2022, and I didn't think the Eagles' offense suffered one bit. But it can affect a coach because it absolutely did affect. Not that Jonathan Gannon was an amazing play caller to begin with, but I think it's crazy to say that Gannon was all in on what the Eagles were doing. And he was flat out lying about what was going on in the NFC Championship after they beat the 49ers. He's like, I'm not going anywhere. And he's meeting with Arizona behind closed doors, during the Super Bowl process. And then his defense laid a complete egg, and it felt like he had no idea how to contain Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, and that Chiefs offense. I mean, that's kind of what cost you a ring. So I'm a little sensitive to this. And I think that it's, again, my take would be that the coaching candidates shouldn't be interviewed until after the playoffs. I know it's a very tough, situation because, like I said, the draft process starts so fast, and same with free agency, and teams got to go. But I don't know. I mean, I just think there's got to be a way. There's got to be some sort of middle ground here. I can't stand it. Especially like the fact that the Cowboys are distracting the Eagles play caller in the middle of a playoff run. I don't know. It grinds my gears 100%. All right, guys, coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast, there are some Eagles that are underratedly important against the Rams. I'm going to tell you 3 guys that are crucial to a divisional round win against Los Angeles. We'll get into that coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. This episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks. It's playoff time, and if you're like me, you want to make the most of these final weeks of football action. That's where Prize Picks comes in. If you love football and want a chance to win real money while watching the games, Prize Picks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. With Prize Picks, all you do, simply pick more or less on player stats like total passing yards or rushing touchdowns, and for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money, you can make your picks in less than 60 seconds. Whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payout or you want to cash out quickly, Prize Picks has got you covered. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, it's clear that people are loving this platform. I've been playing for a while now. I'm having a blast. This week, I'm eyeing Jared Goff to get over 230 yards against the Washington Commanders. Jalen Hurts maybe over that 200-yard passing total. Saquon Barkley, give me that anytime touchdown, more than one score. It's so easy to use. I love how fast Prize Picks has the payouts. I've gotten paid out in as little as 15 minutes when my picks hit, and they normally do with Saquon Barkley. Plus, the weekly promos like Taco Tuesday discounts add even more value to your lineup. Here's a special offer for Locked On NFL listeners. Download the app today. Use the code in all caps, Locked On NFL, to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Prize Picks. Run your game. Download the app today. Use the code Locked On NFL. Get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup at Prize Picks. Run your game. Thanks as always for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. I think the Eagles are going to win this game against the Rams, and I think they're going to do it in more convincing fashion than they did against the Packers. And it's not like the entire Eagles roster struggled against the Packers. The defense absolutely won in convincing fashion. I think the run game did as well. But I don't think there's going to be moments where it's as close as it was against Green Bay, where in the third quarter, it's a one-score game. Like, I really like this matchup. I think the Eagles match up really well with the Rams, especially if there is some snow. We'll see what the forecast looks like on Sunday. But if it is that kind of game where it's physical, ground and pound style playoff football, I don't think the Rams match up well with the Eagles at all in that kind of an environment. And of course, Saquon Barkley is crucial to this game, and so is Jalen Carter and Jalen Hurts. I need A.J. Brown to be more involved, and Devontae Smith. But there are some underrated players that are really important in this game. And there's 3 guys that I'm watching specifically against Los Angeles, and 2 of them are on defense. 1 is on offense. 2 up front, 1 at corner. It's Cooper DeJean, Cam Jurgens, and Milton Williams. This is the second week in a row that Cooper DeJean is one of my top 3 players to watch. On defense, when you look at what the biggest matchups are, the last 2 games, who are 2 players that you have to stop to get to the NFC Championship? Last week, it was Jaden Reed. This week, I think it's Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. Even though his role has been extremely reduced in the Rams' offense, he is still a dangerous receiver, especially if you put him inside. A good route runner, you give him those choice routes, inside breaking, outside breaking. That's a dangerous player to cover in that kind of tight space where he has that optionality, especially same goes for Puka Nacua. Cooper DeJean held Jaden Reed in check last week, just 4 catches for a little over 40 receiving yards. If DeJean can have that same success against Nacua and or Kupp on the inside, I really like the Eagles' chances to win this football game. And I thought even though Nacua had over 100 yards receiving against the Eagles in November, very little of it was against DeJean. Most of it was against Darius Slay and Isaiah Rodgers on the right side of the field. DeJean locked those guys down. He had a couple very impressive pass breakups, 1 on 3rd down. DeJean is a crucial piece to this run, and I think for the second week in a row, he has one of the biggest matchups of the game. I mean, we're always going to talk about Quinyon Mitchell. Can Darius Slay stay healthy in this game? Are we going to see some Isaiah Rodgers again, who did get a forced fumble last time he played the Rams? But overall, I think eyes should be on Cooper DeJean in the slot. 2 other players that I'm watching. Cam Jurgens. I think Cam Jurgens has a tough assignment against the Rams. Their interior defensive line has 2 stud young defensive tackles. Kobe Turner, Braden Fisk, both had over 8 sacks this year. That's a really tough matchup. And I also think that Cam Jurgens, obviously, I want the Eagles to run the football a lot in this game. Who's like the most important lineman in that kind of situation? It's the pulling center. It's Cam Jurgens. And I thought he looked incredible the first game against Los Angeles. So I think he's really important because he has a tough matchup with Fisk and with Turner. Want to keep Jalen Hurts clean inside the pocket. Don't have to flush him out. And I think just because the Eagles are not going to waver and they're going to be a run-first offense on Sunday, Cam Jurgens is instrumental to that process. So I think Cam Jurgens is very important. You could also say Mekhi Becton. Like, yeah, of course you got Jared Verse and Byron Young on the edge, but I think we know that Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson, they might get beat a time or 2, but it's very rare that they're struggling in a football game. So I'm not really keeping a close eye on those guys. I think it's Becton and Jurgens, and you could also say Landon Dickerson. They've got tough matchups with good pass rushing defensive tackles and Braden Fisk and Kobe Turner for the Rams. 2 of the most underrated players, I think, in football. Really, really good players. So I'm watching Jurgens specifically for that, and again, because the Eagles are still going to run through Saquon Barkley. And then my third player to watch, underratedly so, Milton Williams. Milton Williams last week did not get enough credit for how much he wrecked that football game. Jalen Carter was getting doubled a majority of the time and still stepped up. That 3rd and 3 where Carter stops Josh Jacobs, eventually forces the turnover with that 4th down being incomplete. That was one of the biggest plays of the game. But Milton Williams, because Jalen was getting double-teamed, he had so many one-on-ones, and he was consistently getting to Jordan Love. He had multiple big-time pressures in the first half, in the second half. Milton is getting paid like every week that goes by. His open market value in free agency, it's going up and up. I don't know if the Eagles are going to be able to afford his contract, so you might as well get the most out of him in this playoff run. Milton, with those one-on-ones against the Rams, needs to take advantage. Matt Stafford is not a mobile quarterback. if you can flush him outside the pocket, like make him move, that's really important. Getting pressure on the inside against the Rams is really important. And of course, that's why Jalen Carter is someone you always watch. But Milton Williams consistently gets those one-on-ones, and he's one of the best in the league at winning those matchups. He had the highest pass rush win rate this year of any defensive tackle. And again, yes, a lot of that credit goes to Jalen Carter taking up so much attention of the offensive line. But Milton Williams still has to win those matchups. And he's the guy that has an opportunity to consistently get to Matt Stafford. Maybe more than anybody, he's going to have that mismatch, that advantage every single week. So I'm watching Milton Williams. Like, of course, Nolan Smith dominated last week and Jalen Carter, but Milton quietly was getting after Jordan Love, like play after play. And if he can do that against Matt Stafford, who's a more of a traditional pocket passer compared to Love, that's going to be extremely important. So those three guys, yeah, again, we're always watching Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, the stars of the team on both sides of the ball. But Cooper DeJean, Cam Jurgens, Milton Williams, these three players are extremely important against the Rams on Sunday to get a win and to get to the NFC Championship, I think, against the Lions. But who knows? Maybe the Commanders pull off an upset. All right, guys, coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast, no Nakobe Dean in this game. He is out for the year. Is it Jeremiah Trotter Jr. taking his place? Is it Orin Burks? If it is Trotter Jr., I'm going to tell you why you should trust the rookie and know he's not going to be a weakness that Sean McVay can pick on. We'll wrap up this Friday edition of Locked On Eagles coming up next. This episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is sponsored by Intuit TurboTax. Taxes were waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back this year, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now taxes are matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy, all so you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right, so no Nakobe Dean the rest of the playoff run is a big blow. Nakobe was one of the most underrated pieces of the 2024 run. I thought he was wrecking that. Like, we talked about underrated players that are important against the Rams. Cooper DeJean, Cam Jurgens, Milton Williams had such a quietly dominant game against the Packers. That just, I feel like, is Milton every single week. But Nakobe Dean was that guy too in the first half. He was wrecking that ball game. With no Nakobe out for the year, it's either going to be, or I think it'll probably be a rotation of Orin Burks and Jeremiah Trotter Jr. I'd like just one of them to be out there, and I would like a lot more dime looks. To me, let's see if we can get Keely Ringo on the field or Isaiah Rodgers, Sidney Brown. I think if Fangio does have an extra defensive back in the field, it would be Avonte Maddox. I'm not a big fan of that. I would like Ringo out there. I've seen this dude play a lot more physical, especially on special teams. Their best gunner hitter of that unit in 2024. I would like some more DB looks, but when they do have a linebacker out there, I think they should just commit to one of Burks or Trotter, and I think it should be Trotter. Like, yeah, Burks had a really strong end of the year when he played against the Cowboys in that blowout win, Week 17. Week 18 against the Giants, I thought he looked really good. And then against the Packers, he had the first play of the game, the forced fumble on the kick return. So Orin Burks is a solid, backup linebacker. But I think also when he had to play extended time on defense against Green Bay, you saw the Packers start to pick on him, and he's a liability in coverage. Is Jeremiah Trotter Jr. this top-tier elite coverage linebacker? No. But I like Trotter more than Burks in this matchup. And I trust him. Like, he's a fifth-round rookie, and he's not the most athletic player, but he gives me TJ Edwards vibes where just from the jump, the minute he came into Philadelphia, OTAs, training camp, the preseason, it just looked like everything came natural to him. He just understood the game. The game slowed down for him. Like, he was anticipating plays. I thought there was a point in the summer where I said Jeremiah Trotter Jr. looks like the Eagles' best linebacker. So, yeah, this is a big spot to get your first extended playing time, like in an important game where you're not just a backup playing in a meaningless week 17 or 18 game. Like, this is a huge spot against an elite play caller in Sean McVay, who's going to try to pick on you if you're a rookie linebacker who, again, isn't the most athletic player. They're going to try to get that mismatch. But I don't know. I trust Trotter. And I also trust Vic Fangio. This year, I mean, has there been a coach that's gotten more out of young players than Vic Fangio? Like, he has done a perfect job of seeing what a young player does best and maximizing their strengths. So I feel like, yeah, McVay might go after 54 if he is the one out there instead of Orin Burks. Either way, they're going to target that mismatch with their tight ends and their slot receivers, maybe running backs as well in the open field. But I think Fangio, number one, can really help them in coverage, kind of, I don't want to say hide them, but make it easier on them. And with Trotter, if he's the guy, even in week 17 and 18, when he played, it's like, yep, that's like the most consistent player on defense. He's the one in on every single play. Is he Nakobe Dean or Zach Bond? I don't know. I mean, not yet, but I kind of trust him. Like, I feel confident that, yeah, he's not going to be Nakobe Dean, like I said, but I think Trotter, I'm excited to see him against the Rams and against the run. Like, I'm very, very confident that he can be a plus player on defense that's not a liability. And how cool of a story is that, right? Jeremiah Trotter Jr., the son of an Eagles legend that was in NFC title after NFC title at the Link, is now playing in his dad's number with the Eagles, and it has a chance to help this team get sent to another NFC title. Like, this is one of the coolest stories ever. And if he goes out there and he balls out and he makes a big play or two, like, that's just such a cool story. And I really hope that he does play. Vic Fangio in his press conference this week sounded like he has confidence in Trotter. He said he has a bright future, and maybe that future's now. And I think with Fangio, like, he doesn't, kind of cover things up with the way he talks, right? He's pretty blunt, pretty honest. Like, look how he talks about Bryce Huff. If he believes in a guy, he's not going to fluff him up. Or I should say, like, he's going to say it. And if he doesn't believe in a guy, I should say he's not going to fluff him up and kind of hide it. He's very blunt about, this guy has some work to do. This guy is coming along great. He's been very honest all year to the media. It's very face value. And so if he's hyping up a player, that means he believes in him. And the way he talked about Trotter this week, I think he is going to be the one out there more than Orin Burks, who I just think last week showed that I don't think he's as explosive, and I think he's more of a liability than Trotter. But again, I would like to see more looks where you have 3 safeties out there, you've got 4 corners. I don't want Maddox out there. I guess that's who it would be, but I would love to see, I know Fangio just doesn't trust Sidney Brown, and I kind of understand it. He's just out of control. He's just a rocket just flying around, but he misses too many tackles, although I love Sid, and I still think he's got a lot of potential. I would like to see, though, Ringo or Rodgers out there. It might be Maddox, but either way, I do think I'd like to see a more DB-heavy scheme on Sunday, but we'll see. Either way, I'm confident in Trotter. Again, I think he just gives me TJ Edwards vibes, where he's not the most talented linebacker, not the biggest, not the strongest, not the fastest, but he's just such a natural football player. And again, such a cool story that he could have a real role in a playoff game at Lincoln Financial Field. I always think back to that picture of Trotter Sr. holding Trotter Jr. as the confetti is falling after the 2004 NFC title win. Like, that's awesome, and we'll see what happens. I think Sean McVay and Matt Stafford are going to go after him, and that's going to be a fun chess match. Fangio versus McVay, round 2. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this Friday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Our next show will be our post-game podcast after Eagles-Rams in the divisional round, kickoff at 3 o'clock. Hopefully, we are recapping an Eagles win, and they punch their ticket to the NFC title. Thanks, as always, for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Until Sunday, thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.